Hi, my name is Tammy Horlacher, and I'm the Activities Coordinator at the STEM Center for Strength. The STEM Center for Strength is a resiliency center that was set up in the aftermath of the shooting that occurred at STEM School Highlands Ranch on May 7th, 2019. We are a state and grant funded facility, and this is where I'm going to be awkward. I can't find, oh, here we go. I just have a couple of slides to share with you. You can tell I don't do this all the time. So there we go. So like I said, we're a state and grant funded facility. We are limited in what we can spend our money on. We do work toward helping our community heal and move forward. This is just a little slide about who we are and who we serve. It's anyone in the community who was impacted by the events of May 7th. We have all kinds of services we offer, from individual and family counseling sessions to community activities just to be together. And this is a quick just screenshot of our January calendar. You can always go on the STEM Centerforstrength.org and sign up for our newsletter. You'll get all the information there. So I don't see anybody else in the waiting room, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So a word of the year. The reason I started doing this a few years ago is because anytime the end of the year, I would start thinking about what I wanted from the new year and how I wanted myself to be different. I would set these expectations, I would make resolutions, and by mid-January, they were typically out the door. And then I felt like I was a failure and a disappointment to myself because I wasn't kind of being accountable to myself. So a friend of mine, their family does word of the year, and I started doing it a few years ago. I will give you the example. My word for last year was flourish. I love to say the word, first of all, which I think that's part of it, like a word that makes you happy. Because I felt very stagnated where I was. I know a lot of it had to do with COVID and being stunted in my trauma journey after what my girls went through. And to be perfectly honest, after being a stay-at-home mom for 15 years, I didn't feel like I had a lot of things to offer besides the job I had at the time, which was a volunteer coordinator at a middle school. So over the course of the year, I started doing things to kind of work around my word, doing things that were important for me. Self-care was, I know that's something that's thrown out a lot, but to flourish, you have to take care of yourself. So that kind of got more into my routine. And then when this job came open, this is not something I normally would have done. I had a job that I was happy enough with. It was fine. I was part-time, but I applied for it and went for it, and I got the job. And this job has been fantastic for me and my growth and my trauma journey, honestly. So I feel like 2021, despite all of its challenges, was a year that I flourished. So when I sat down to think about what I wanted to do this year, I thought about what I could use more of in my life. And that's going to be kind of one of the questions we answer. So what we're going to do, we're going to kind of think about what we want to focus on for the next year. And I'm going to ask you some questions and you can write some things down. The reason we're doing that is to kind of look for an overarching theme of what you're writing down. And then we'll look for words that fit that theme. Okay. So my first thing that I do when I'm trying to figure out my word of the year is what can I use more of in my life? Okay, so if you want to take a minute to think and write a few things down, I will be quiet. So I think we'll take one more minute. Okay. You can always come back to this question if you feel like you want to flesh something out a little more. But I do have a few more questions. So I want to make sure we have time and I honor y'all's time. So the next question you're going to think about is, what do you want to have less of in 2022 in your life? One more minute for that. So, and I know those are huge questions, right? So, like I said, you can always come back to these. Um, the next couple of things that we want to talk about, this next one is huge when you want to think about who you are. But my next question that I ask myself is what characteristics do you want to work on or develop in 2022? Give one more minute for that question. So, our next question is a fill in the blank. And you can think about just the majority of your days. But by the end of the day, I feel blank. One more minute and we'll go over our last question. So our last question is a natural next step after we think about how we do feel right now. How do you want to feel at the end of your day? And we'll just take another minute for that question. So those were pretty deep, sometimes existential questions, right? It feels like it can be overwhelming, and that's not what I want this process to be for you. So, what I'd like for you to do is um, take a look at your words or your answers and see if there are any commonalities between any of the answers. If you see a theme developing in what you've written down. And I'm going to give you guys about 5 minutes. But while you're doing that, if you do see a theme, I am going to share a document. Hopefully this is big enough for you guys to see. But with just some ideas of a word of the year. Okay. There are lots of lists like this out in the universe on the internet. This is just one that I picked today. So I'll be quiet and give y'all about 5 minutes to kind of look at your answers. Okay, are you guys ready to talk about things a little bit? So I think I'll share how I came up with my word of the year, because I had a different one and I changed my mind. I just made it a little broader. So the point of this is so you don't, a word of the year feels much more accommodating than a resolution that's hard and fast. So my word of the year is compassion. I started out with self-compassion because everyone on this Zoom knows me. But for those of you who may be watching this after, I can be a little bit tough on myself, and that's being nice. So I wanted to be nicer to myself and extend the same grace to Tammy that I extend to other people. But then I started thinking about the parameters of my job. I want to help everybody who walks through our door. I can't fix things. So my compassion needs to have boundaries. And I need to develop those and understand what they are. So that's why I kind of moved from self-compassion to compassion. This is also why I love word of the year. After I started thinking and kind of ruminating on my word a little bit, I realized there was just a slightly different path I wanted to take. So I'm going to really quickly just give a couple of instructions and then I'll stop the recording. And I'd like for just us who are here on the Zoom call to talk about, if we'd like, share kind of what we're thinking. So what I did with my word after I picked it, I have a bit of art ability. So I found a compassion written the way I liked it in a font online, and I copied that. You could also print the word out and trace it with paper if that would be easier for you. Then I colored my word in, and I took, honestly, the cheapest watercolor because my 17-year-old has the really good watercolors. I have the cheap ones that I got on clearance at Michael's. And I just took colors that I liked and painted my piece of paper that I used. I would tell you, if you're going to do something like that, watercolors or markers, make sure you're using paper that's made for that so it doesn't crinkle up as you're working. You can do that. You can print out a coloring page, Google something like that. My word is something that's up in my office for me to see whenever I'm in there. Now, I'm not always in my office. I'm at the Center for Strength a lot. So I also Googled some quotes that would work for my word. So I looked for things for compassion and self-compassion. That's what I wanted to concentrate on. Those quotes are now taped to the inside of my planner for work, so I can see them when I open that up. So any idea that you have for how to keep your word of the year front and center is what works for you. There are no expectations here, and it doesn't have to be something that's going to hang in the Musée d'Orsay in Paris. This is for you and something that makes you happy. So thank you for joining us tonight. I hope that this helps you kind of set a focus for the year, and we look forward to you attending other activities at the Center for Strength.